Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Sammy Roth.
And I'm Rosie Murphy, and this is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
We are up to Season 5, Episode 10, He's Our You. It is, of course, a Sayid episode.
Our guest this week is Eric Lange, who played Radzinsky, who has some great moments in this episode.
So, some great and awful moments, but great. But great.
Fun to watch.
Yeah. Anyway, let's, Sayid is one of our favorite characters on The Hatch, so let's do it.
We start every episode of The Hatch with hot takes. Before we get into He's Our You, we're going to share a couple that we've received over the last week about LaFleur and Namaste and the events of the last couple of episodes.
First, we've got Owen from Ireland here.
Hello, Sammy and Rosie. This is Owen here from Ireland. Thank you so much for doing Season 5. I'm absolutely loving it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Sawyer's leadership role, something that you mentioned last week. And it led me back to Season 3, the episode Left Behind, when Sawyer is conned by Hurley to be nice. And there's an interesting conversation there where the word leader is brought up to Sawyer, and he responds by saying, like, what are you smoking? And Hurley said, Jack didn't want to be the leader either, it sucks to be you. And I just thought it was very, very interesting that, the future leader of the island was telling this to a guy that was going to be the time-travelling leader in the future. And it's quite interesting then when you look at the final conversation in Namaste, because I really just feel like it just...
Yeah, Owen, I think that's a really great reference, and I'm sorry the take cut off. It was sent through Facebook Messenger, which is one of the ways to reach us, and it looks like they had a time limit on that, perhaps. But I think that the reference back to Left Behind is really astute here with future leader Hurley, showing future leader Sawyer that he's got the potential for this. And I look back at the dialogue, and Sawyer asks, "Leader, what the hell are you smoking?" And Hurley's response is, "Jack's gone, Locke's gone, Kate and Sayid, you're all we got." And Sawyer asks, "What if I don't want to be the leader?" And Hurley says, "Yeah, well, I don't think Jack wanted it either. Sucks for you, dude." I'd forgotten about that.
Huh. And yeah, wow, what great foreshadowing, intentional or not, because of course what does happen is everybody else is gone and the mantle falls to Sawyer.
We were a bit critical of Jack last week, endorsing Sawyer's criticism of them, of him and their argument, and we got a response to that from our listener, Brad.
Hey guys, my name is Brad from Kentucky, and I wanted to call to defend Jack a little bit. I've never loved him as a character, but I certainly think that I like him a little more than you guys do. And specifically the scene where he's talking with Sawyer, and where Sawyer compares himself to Winston Churchill. And I feel like in the show, up to this point, there hasn't been a lot of times for Jack to be proactive as a leader, and he just has to he has to react on instinct because that's what's asked upon him. And since the beginning, Sawyer has never really stepped up as a leader to, be the counter to Jack. So it's an easy shot for Sawyer to take, but I don't see it have much merit. Anyway, love the show. Thank you guys.
Yeah, Brad, I think you make a good point here that Jack was leading the group through a very tumultuous 100 days. He had to think on his feet a lot. He didn't have a ton of time to sit and read and process and think things through. That said, Sawyer probably could have responded to their return in a more... I think Sawyer's being more deliberate here than he has to be, but you're right in showing that grace to Jack, I think.
I agree about the grace to Jack, but Rosie, I think you raise a good point there that Sawyer is presented with a situation here where he has to be reactive, but he somehow managed to deal with it in a way that feels very proactive. Like he jumps on this problem so fast, and he's thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else here.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't know. I mean, I frankly don't think Jack would have handled this quite so well if the roles were reversed. So someone can call and disagree with that next week. I have a hot take about this week that has nothing to do with Jack and Sawyer. I'll do something unusual and start with the ending of this episode. The scene where Sayid shoots young Ben in the chest and runs off into the jungle. I remember the first time I watched this being just so, absolutely flabbergasted, like, knocked on my butt, like, oh my God, holy shit, I can't believe it. They're actually changing the past. Like, really, that's where the episode ends, and you're led to believe that Ben is dead. And I'm just thinking, like, crap, they actually killed him. This is going to change the past. It changes the future. Like, this is going to be like a time loop situation. How is this going to work? If Ben doesn't grow up to be Ben, the events that brought them back to this point are changed. So how does this event happen to begin with? Like, it creates this classic, crazy, time travel contradiction scenario. And I was just so excited the first time I watched this to see how Lost was going to handle that, because it was just so not what I was expecting from this show. Not that I was, like celebrating the death of an, at this point, innocent child, which is another matter. But I was just thinking, wow, like, this is not the route I expected Lost to go. And I'm so thrilled to see this. So I remember being disappointed when they walked it back the following week and saved Ben. And in retrospect, it probably had to happen that way. It's probably a better show for, playing by the rules of time travel, and whatever happened and jumping through those intellectual hoops. And it's probably ultimately more compelling this way and more coherent. But I think my hot take is that I still kind of wish we could have seen the Lost that would have been for that last year and a half if they had actually played out the Ben is dead, everything is blown up in this timeline scenario.
Yeah. I mean, I think the rules have been established, right? Whatever happened, happened. And Ben did grow up to first commit the purge and then move his people into Dharmaville and then become their leader. And this was a bump along the way. I will say, I think there is some confusing stuff. I was trying to think through the mechanics of, like, okay, Ben has met Sayid. Ben has helped Sayid. Presumably he would remember this years in the future when Sayid comes back.
Well, they deal with this in a non-satisfactory way in next week's episode. There's this whole thing where Richard explains to Kate, I think, that if they take Ben into the temple and save him, he says he's not going to remember any of this.
Right.
Which is there, but I agree with your criticism, because I think that's frankly a dissatisfying and sort of silly explanation and a way of so it's like I love the story decision to have Sayid shoot Ben just because I think it's so startling. But then if this is how they're going to deal with it in a way that's very contrived, and the fact that, I mean, my God, Sayid is a professional assassin and he shoots the kid in the chest and he somehow manages not to kill him, like. It's fairly unbelievable and contrived. So considering all that, I guess another way to state my hot take would be that I almost feel like it wasn't worth doing this if, the follow-through is not going to be there in a satisfying way, which I feel like it isn't.
Ooh, I don't know if I agree with you on that. I mean, I think what we see throughout this episode, and we'll get into this more, but is Sayid really, like, cracking up and giving up and realizing that he's been brought back to the island against his will, already back in the real world. He had been assassinating all these people on Ben's behalf, and then all of a sudden Ben just kind of drops him and he's directionless, and he sort of goes in pursuit of some direction. And what we thought was in the life and death of Jeremy Bentham was, Sayid seeking atonement or something, seems in this episode to really just be Sayid trying to figure out what the hell to do with himself. And then he's captured and, he's brought back to this island. He's forced into captivity. I think this whole episode is about Sayid saying, like, well, what the fuck, what am I supposed to do now?
Right, and then he decides that his purpose is to kill young Ben.
Yeah,
it's his purpose.
He feels like he has lost absolutely everything. And lots of it has been taken from him by Ben. And what he can do to stop that from happening, I think it's not unlike the decision Jack makes later in the season that, what he can do, what Sayid can do to save himself some kind of future pain, or maybe it's about vengeance. I don't know. We'll get into that, but he has this opportunity before him to change the course of things, and he takes it.
So I don't think Sayid is really thinking about changing the future in the way that Jack is, but we obviously a lot to talk about. Let's put a quick pin in it, because I do want to hear your hot take before we go too deep on Sayid.
Yes. So my take is that Radzinsky's total obsession with his intellectual property of these, the Dharma stations.
His intellectual property.
Ultimately saves Sawyer. it saves him in this episode. Because Sayid, after he's taken like the truth serum thing, uses his name, and one of the Dharma party says, "Who is Sawyer?" And Radzinsky cuts in immediately and says, "Ask him about the models."
Oh my God.
And on one hand, it's like, Radzinsky, chill. He didn't see the models. On the other hand, thank God he did, or Sawyer might have been found out. So
I'm so glad that was your hot take, because I legitimately had the same note here, and it's just it's hilarious that's what saves Sawyer. It's so funny.
And nobody it's never acknowledged. We just move right along, but it was very satisfying for me as a viewer.
Yeah. We by the way, we mentioned this up front, but we've got Eric Lange on this episode, who plays Radzinsky and is an absolute delight to talk to, and has all sorts of interesting thoughts about what makes Radzinsky, exactly this big of a jerk and an obsessive as he is. So that scene, by the way, the torture scene, I think there's several funny things about it, but the line that really had me cracking up was after Sayid announces, and they ask him, "How do you know all this?" And he announces, "It's because I'm from the future." And then you have Oldham saying something to the effect of like, "Maybe I should have used half a dropper. Oops." And I was just like dying of laughter at that point.
Oh,
I mean, come on, you weren't okay. It's such a ridiculous scene. Frankly, this scene is one of the reasons why I remember not liking this episode very much. But in retrospect, watching again now, I actually appreciate it quite a bit more. I think Naveen Andrews absolutely sells the hell out of the ridiculous lines that he has to deliver, and the sort of insanity of how he's responding to whatever this is, this sugar cube that Oldham has fed him. Like, Naveen is great, and I know the thing with the phonograph playing, and just having to see Sawyer there, like, hoping and praying that Sayid is somehow able to resist. Like, in retrospect, I actually enjoyed this scene quite a bit. Not enjoyed, like I was happy watching Sayid get tortured. I do kind of think it was a better done scene than I recollected.
Yeah, I was grateful that they weren't sort of physically torturing him, and that it was just sort of this truth potion thing. Kind of leaving aside how absurd that is.
Yes, extremely.
On one hand, it works. Sayid is telling the truth, and the truth is so absurd that no one believes him. And I think, my sort of theory of this episode is that Sayid is about to give up, like about to just give up, abandon all hope, and sort of resign himself to his fate, I guess, just being stuck on this island again. And that's kind of what the truth serum makes him do, right? I mean, he tells the truth, which is that I've been here before. I'm from the future. Here's my situation. And then the scene ends with him like maniacally laughing in this way that's like really unsettling.
You used exactly enough.
And I think that is like a relatively clear glimpse into where Sayid is at this point, which is like total despair.
Well, it's hard to blame him. I mean, we've talked about this in the last few weeks, and we see it in flashback this week where, after, like you said, after everything that Ben's put him through, and then, cruelly got rid of him and then brought him back into it, and it's like he's finally at a place where he just has to figure out, what do I do with myself? And what happens is he finally thinks he's going to get a little bit of pleasure maybe in this interaction with Alana, and nope, it turns out that it's a trap, and he's kidnapped. And my God, the scene where, I'd forgotten this, but the scene at the airport where he sees, Hurley and Jack and Kate, and he's thinking like, oh shit, this plane is definitely going back to the island. And he like, he's like desperate to not go, even after everything, he still has enough will to want to, live and make something, with his life, that he's begging Alana, don't put me on this plane, take the next one. It's so, it's so sad. It's really, it's cruel to have to watch.
I think Sayid feels like he has, very little left on sort of Earth, right? He's lost Nadia. He has done things for Ben that, are horrible. And I don't really like what this episode does with the like, oh, Sayid has always been a killer thing. I don't believe that. And
no, neither do I. It's awful.
This is a very roundabout way of saying, On Earth, he sort of feels like he has maybe very little to live for. On the island, he has nothing. And yet he's dragged back. And that sucks.
Well, a couple of thoughts about that. One, I couldn't agree with you more that this is a gross oversimplification of who Sayid is, and that and that's frankly what I don't like. Just as a fan of this show, about his storyline the last 2 seasons here, because in a way it kind of endorses that idea. I mean, he ultimately gets to redeem himself, but it's this idea that he needs to redeem himself because a killer is who he is, and seemingly that's how the monster was able to infiltrate him, perhaps, or contributed to that. It seems like it emphasized that aspect of him. So I don't like that at all. I mean, I'm thinking back and I'm thinking, he says to Alana that he quit the only thing he was ever good at because he's trying to change. It's like, dude, killing. It's nice that you're trying to change. Killing is not the only thing you were ever good at. Like, you are resourceful and brilliant and compassionate, and like those people on the island wouldn't have made it nearly as long as they did without your skills and your resourcefulness.
How many times did we see Sayid fix a radio or fix some kind of equipment or rescue people, save lives? Like,
I guess it's the thing about, does he like killing? I mean, he has that conversation with Ben where Ben's, as you said, telling him you're a killer, it's your nature, and Sayid's response is, I'm not what you think I am. I don't like killing. Mm-hmm. And I think he's telling the truth there. I don't think he likes killing.
No.
Like, yeah, he's done a bunch of it, but I mean, my God, after he shoots Ben at the end, like, he doesn't like doing that. Like, he's decided it's his purpose, but he hesitates before pulling the trigger. He looks pained as fuck when he says, this is, you were right about me. I am a killer. He runs off into the jungle afterwards. Like, the dude does not enjoy this shit. Right?
No. I think what that line does underscore, though, when he says to Ben, you were right about me, I am a killer. I feel like part of what's happening in this episode, or what the show wants us to think is happening, is Sayid is sort of like accepting this and saying like, well, fuck it, there's no way out. I guess this is who I am. And it's nihilistic almost. Like, okay, well, everything I have done to try to change my life has failed or has been taken from me. And maybe Ben was right. Maybe this is the thing that I do and the reason I'm here. And I think all those I think that's all one line leading him to this very, very dark place. And that, to me, is actually, when I was reflecting on this episode, I can see where we end up in season 6 a little bit more easily after watching this than I've been able to before. Because I think the events that transpired in the year or 2 or 3 leading up to his return to the island and then actually returning, this is a guy who has nothing left.
What did you think of the Ben and Sayid scenes? And I guess
young Ben or old Ben?
Good question. I meent young Ben.
Okay.
I guess I'm thinking in particular about the horrible scene with Ben and his
Roger.
Yeah, with Roger, where Sayid sees how abusive Roger is to this kid, and he slams him against the wall, and you never brought me a sandwich in my life. And I mean, Sayid like instinctively jumps up from his bed like he wants to defend the kid, and he shares with them, my father was a hard man as well. So it's like, on the one hand, Sayid seems sympathetic, but on the other hand, he's like actively planning to murder this child. So I'm trying to parse through what's going on there, and it's challenging to me.
Yeah, it's, early in the episode when he brings Sayid a sandwich, I think it's Phil who's there and says like, this guy's a hostile. Why are you even bothering? And Ben says, well, that, just because he's a hostile doesn't mean he's not hungry. And it really made me feel like this is a time when there was a lot of hope for Ben. He's been dealt a really shitty hand, but he seems to be curious and kind of humanist in his approach. He believes that, the hostiles are not sort of inherently evil or whatever, but at the same time, Ben here is actively plotting his own escape, right? He's plotting to leave this place and go join the others. And eventually that will lead him to a place where he comes back and destroys this entire civilization and kills many, many people. Which is another weird point of commonality, I guess, between him and Sayid.
Ooh.
But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I do think this episode is trying to weave a few parallels there by giving us that flashback scene at the opening with Sayid's father and Sayid underscoring that here. And at the same time, like, what is to be done about that? Like, I guess I can picture a world in which there's a more compassionate Sayid who takes pity on this boy and says, like, you know, you got dealt a shitty hand, so did I. I can relate to you. But at the same time, this man, you know, for Sayid, a matter of months ago, was dispatching him to kill person after person. And I don't know that I can see how it would be impossible to separate that from your understanding of this person. Like, this is someone who is going to grow up to order the death, you know, to purge the Dharma Initiative, to order the deaths of, you know, dozens of people, to become sort of obsessed with power and vengeance himself. Like, I don't know. It's really sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, and I think that Sayid does feel. I mean, I don't think that it's, you know, just that he. I think that Sayid does feel some sympathy here. I mean, I think we see that, and I think perhaps that explains why he seems hesitant at the end, why he doesn't just immediately raise the gun, pull the trigger, why he waits and thinks. And maybe when he says, "You were right about me, I am a killer," it's almost like he's talking himself into going through with it, justifying it. And perhaps the reason for that is, and this is a bit of speculation, but I think there's evidence for it in this episode, is that we do see him develop some sympathy for young Ben here, sort of in spite of his better judgment. I mean, you're right. Maybe there's a universe where a different Sayid handles it differently, but unfortunately, Ben goes on to help make him who he is, and in this moment, and so there's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy aspect to this, but yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive necessarily. I think both of those things can coexist with within Sayid here.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot, this episode does, it's impressive that they make us feel any sympathy for Ben at all, knowing what kind of person he goes on to be. But I don't know, I was feeling sympathy for this kid.
Me too.
Ben is so bad. When he brings Sayid back into this life after letting him go, and Sayid's out there building homes, I mean, my fucking God. Just, you cut the guy off, and he felt so bad about it, and he's like, what do I do now? It's like, I don't know, live your life. And it's like, no, but I'm going to need you back. Like, he's just fucking with him.
Yeah, you don't get to walk into this person's life and have that kind of control, Ben. Let Sayid live.
I feel like that's been our meta theme this season, just for almost like half the characters, like, just leave him alone.
Just let him live. I do want to talk, moving into things that are only tangentially related to Sayid, about the sort of Dharma council scene in the living room where the vote is taken to condemn Sayid to death, basically. Obviously, you've got Radzinsky here, gunning for this man to be killed, as he's been doing from the beginning. And then Sawyer is put in this position where he's forced to vote for it to protect his own cover, I guess. And that really broke my heart. That was really hard to watch.
Same. I felt bad for Sawyer this week just because, like, he spent, all of last week and the week before that in this mode of, like, I can solve this, let me handle it and do my thing, and I'm going to figure this shit out and save y'all. And he tries so hard to do that with Sayid here. And Sayid just makes it impossible for him.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sawyer,
there's really nothing he can do.
Sawyer offers him what is seemingly a pretty good deal. Like, say that you're defecting from the others and come, live among us. You can be one of us. We're all, making do here already. And Sayid is completely uninterested in that. And I think that was one of the early signals to me that, Sayid was kind of going down this very dark path. Like in another world, even in last week's episode, I think we see Sayid, hearing what Sawyer is saying, picking up, playing the game, and he's just not interested in playing the game anymore.
Especially not after he meets young Ben Linus. I mean, that seems to be the thing that really sends him over the edge.
Yeah.
And the dialogue at the beginning of this episode, it's so good. I mean, it's great writing when Sayid asks,
A 12-year-old Ben Linus brought me a chicken salad sandwich. How do you think I'm doing? A sweet kid, huh? How can you live with him here?
Which is interesting because Sawyer almost kind of shrugs that off. And I guess maybe that speaks to the fact that Ben has messed up Sayid's life in a very, very deep way and a personal way, forced Sayid to do these horrible things. And Ben has messed with Kate's life, by sort of threatening to take her child away. He's messed with Ben's life, but he hasn't manipulated anybody as foundationally as he's been manipulating Sayid. And I guess I can see why that flips that switch for Sayid, and he says, no way am I cooperating with anything that has to do with him.
Yeah, and and it's definitely frustrating for Sawyer, but you said this earlier that you start to see here why Sayid is going down this dark path, irrespective of what happens with the monster later. And I sort of hate to admit it, but I agree with you. He's on this path sort of one way or another, and the monster accelerates it, but it's the events that have transpired in his life and the things that have already been done to him, pre-monster ritual that have sent him in this direction to begin with. Ugh. The other thing with with Sawyer, I just there's you can see the threads of his and Juliet's life just so rapidly coming undone as the Sayid situation escalates. That conversation they have at the beginning, it's brutal. I mean, Juliet just up and says
it's over, isn't it?
What's over?
This. Us. Playing house. All of it. I never actually thought they'd come back.
I mean, she's now referring to it as if it was a game they were doing, rather than something real, because she's feeling such despair about it. And, Sawyer's trying so hard, and he says, so they're back. Nothing's changed. And it's no, something's changed. You're still trying to hold it together here and have some hope that you can, but something's changed. And it's just, it's a challenge to have to see them going through that, because you want so badly for them to be able to keep this.
I think this goes way beyond the Kate, the love triangle nonsense. I think this is about the sense that whatever sense of security they had here is gone, right? Whatever amount of we can wake up in the morning and not feel afraid for our lives, which was basically, the base condition of Sawyer's first 100 days on this island, and, Juliet's last half of that time or so. Life is predictable. We can actually just have fun, and we know where our food is coming from. We don't have to go hunt boar every day. They have had as normal a life as one could have given the circumstances. A lot of asterisks after that, but, and it's over. I mean, I think this is reality crashing in, right? And saying glad you had a nice 3 years, but remember this isn't, you're pretending. The whole foundation of your lives here is a lie, basically.
We'll talk about reality crashing in. I mean, the burning bus. I mean, that's the line from Sawyer that really encompasses everything you're saying. He says to Jack, 3 years, no burning buses. Y'all are back for 1 day. Mm-hmm. It's yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. And that sucks. That's so sad.
And to be fair, I mean, you used the word pretending. They weren't pretending. I mean, in terms of what Sawyer... They were pretending in terms of their identities and shit, right, and how they got there. But in terms of what Sawyer and Juliet had between them...
Right.
And the role that they were playing in this community, that wasn't pretending. That was real.
Right.
I mean, even in Sawyer's job, he isn't just, pretending to work for the Dharma Initiative. Like, he's become a part of this community. So is
Yeah.
Juliet. Like, maybe he thinks Phil is a dimwit, which was another hilarious line, by the way. But I think he cares about these people in this place, and because this is where their lives are now. I don't think it's all pretend.
Yeah, it's just really sad. I don't have a lot else to say.
Lost is tragedy. The one other thing that's on my list here, even though, as you said, that you called it the love triangle nonsense, which, as everyone knows by now, I agree it's nonsense. I did kind of enjoy that short sequence between Kate and Juliet, where Juliet asks, Kate, like, hey, did you already find out about me and Sawyer? And she's like, yeah, Hurley told me. And Juliet's response is, it's kind of a relief. I wasn't sure how to tell you without it sounding like I was telling you to stay away. And I was just laughing because it's like, well, damn, Juliet, I think you just gave her that message pretty loud and clear right there.
Huh.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually don't agree with that. I think I kind of...
Really?
No, I thought Juliet was making a good point and kind of making the subtext text there by saying, like, yeah, you should know that sort of the condition of our relationship has changed, but, like, you mostly need that knowledge in order to, like, function in Dharmaville. Like,
Oh.
I read it as Juliet saying, like, hey, look, there's, like, some love triangle going on here that I don't really want to get into, but you're going to need to know this at some point.
Interesting.
Well, that was a lot. Very heavy episode. Bummer of an episode once again. Hopefully we can lighten it up a little bit, maybe, question mark,
Yeah.
with Eric Lange here, who of course played Radzinsky. Sammy and Eric had the chance to chat a few months ago. It's a really, really fun conversation, and I learned a lot from it, so let's play it.
I'm here with Eric Lange, who of course played Stuart Radzinsky on the 5th season of Lost. Eric, thanks very much for being with us on the Hatch podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sammy. I always love to talk about Lost.
So we start every one of these conversations. Tell us how you got cast on the show. Everyone's got a story. What's yours?
Yeah, I had just done this pilot where I grew my hair out and my beard out because I was supposed to be this kind of beach bum, and this audition for this thing came in, and it was this, the sides were different than, the name was different and the scene was very weird, but they said he was a scientist of some sort. And I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to fly, but something also felt kind of like mad scientist about the way I looked at the moment, with the bald head and the long hair. I called it like a skullet, that I had going on. So anyway, and I had these old vintage glasses that I wore, and I just put it all together into some sort of like, this lunatic basically, and went in there and read and it was only supposed to be 2 episodes, but I wanted to do anything I could on that show because I was such a huge fan. And so when I got the job, I was like, amazing, I'm going to be on 2 episodes of Lost. It's like 1 scene or whatever, per episode, but that's fine. And then I guess it was the costumer that called me and said, so you're playing Radzinsky, right? And I was like, no, I'm playing Bob or whatever, And he said, no. And he said, are you aware what that means? And I said, no, I have no, because I didn't remember him mentioned in season 2 or whatever.
I was going to ask you about that. There was an aura of mystery surrounding that guy before he ever showed up on screen.
Yeah, for sure. And so when I immediately Googled the name, I was like, oh my God, these are shoes to fill because this guy knew everything, or we think, So then it was just sort of this awe that I felt of like, oh my God, I get to, not just be on the show, but play someone in the show's, lore and where was it going to go and all this stuff. So, I guess it was like a week later, I was on a plane to Hawaii, and, I was such a huge fan of the show. It always just felt like I'd won like a radio station contest, like go to the set of Lost and meet him. And, I had a fitting, and then I was in a Dharma van with all these, folks from the show. And I told them all, I said, I have to like pinch myself. I can't quite believe I'm here, and I had been working for a long time at that point. So shows like that, still have such an impact on you as an actor and a person, because you sort of note their power in your career, and it was just sort of like a really really trippy time, to be able to do it. And so I guess the longer story is that, I did those couple episodes and everyone was kind of like, why is he such an asshole? And I always sort of assumed, that they pitched him something. They, the higher ups are like, you're going to work with the best and the brightest, and like he was going to some Formula One, driving range or something, and he gets there and it's like driver's ed, and the people he's working with are idiots, and it was nothing of what he was promised, and it's
so you think that's why he was such a jerk to everyone all the time? Yeah,
you get the sense like he had this sort of big opinion of himself, but it always helped me justify playing him that, I was just really sold a bill of goods. I was told I was going to be, with these genius folks, and here I am, doing all the work myself. So that happened, and then I think I went home for Christmas or something, and they called and they said they want to put you on hold for the rest of the season, which was like 5 more episodes, and which blew my mind. And the character just grew and grew into this larger and larger villain. And, I always knew they had the power on that show to sort of form things as they went. And, I guess it was the finale, where Carlton and Damon were on the set, and they told me basically, we have the ability to keep people around longer or keep them around a lesser period of time. And we've just had so much fun watching you that's why you're here, in the finale. And it's, I think I felt really lucky that the guy kind of took off that season, and that, he's a memorable character for sure. I mean, in my career, that's one of the people that still someone will walk up to me and say, fucking Radzinsky, from across the street somewhere or whatever. But I'm proud. It's one of those shows that, you don't get those kind of things twice.
No, that's a great story and a great lead into this conversation. And right from your first scene, you go in there. I think your first scene, Daniel Day Kim busts into the flame station where you're working on the little model for the Swan, and you're just immediately a jerk to him. You're mad that he saw the thing. You're very paranoid about anyone who comes within, looking distance of the model you're building. You shove him for no reason. You're shoving people for no reason all the time, I noticed. You make a pretty strong impression right away. I mean, It looked like you knew what you were going for there. Well,
he did grab those papers. I remember he picked some papers up that were in the printer, and he walked in the office. And I think part of it is, I don't know that Radzinsky ever had any sort of real physical prowess, but you've got these brains, and when those are threatened, or when your only real gift to the community is threatened, maybe he gets violent or he gets aggressive. But yeah, and also there is something to people who are truly gifted mentally. They're often not the best communicators. They're often not the best, the most social people. They're often kind of unpredictable, and so it does kind of work. I always wondered, like, maybe there's like some sort of other thing going on in there, has he got some little flip that's a switch that's flipped or whatever, but mainly just the idea that no one is taking this as seriously as I am, and I know they'll never understand why they need to, and, divorced, maybe it's like, a former drinker and he's quit. Who knows? There's a lot of stuff you could throw at him that would stick.
Right, but I mean, clearly brilliant, as you were saying, because otherwise he, what he wants to do with this electromagnetism, I mean, it's never really fully gotten into, but obviously that's some very high level. So actually, the scene that I thought was maybe most revealing about your characters in that finale when Dr. Chang tries to get you to stop drilling and think of the consequences, and your response to him, just bringing it up here, your response to him is, if Edison was only worried about the consequences, we'd all be still sitting here in the dark. I came to this island to change the world. I mean, you've got some big aspirations / maybe delusions going on here.
Yeah, I do. I remember that line, and that is, he thinks big of himself. It's like if Elon Musk sort of went, off the rails, maybe. Like if he failed for years and then finally had an opportunity to make his Tesla, car, and had all these, idiots working for him. But yeah, it's funny that the whole idea of this digging for this electromagnetic pocket, and if we hit it, Jack, we were in the car, we were in the van going back from shooting the finale from that very scene. And Jack Bender, our director, was sitting in front of me, and he turned around and he goes, it's all your fault. And I said, what? And he's like, the whole show. If you didn't drill for the electromagnetic pocket, we wouldn't have had to build the Swan. The Swan wouldn't have failed. The plane wouldn't have crashed. And I was like, well, then you got to make me a fucking T-shirt that says, lost, and on the back, it's all my fault, It's a really fun idea. But yeah, that show was just so crazy. You just went with it. You didn't even care how it all worked or did it make sense all the time. It was so much fun. It was such an adventure.
What stands? I mean, I have so many questions about everything you just said, but what stands out in your mind from being on that set? I mean, what was so fun about it, being there with those people? And
I guess what I think it was interesting, and the first thing that came into my mind probably isn't what people would think, which was I was so excited to get onto this behemoth of a show, this thing that had become just a worldwide phenomenon, And when I got there and got in the van, everyone was just so low-key. It was like Daniel Day, and I can't remember who else was in there. Daniel Day Cameron, Sawyer, Josh was in there, and I was just like, what do we... And they were so nonchalant and casual, and the whole set kind of had that feeling. And because we were in Hawaii, there was no real Hollywood pressure on it. You know what I mean? Like if we were shooting on Sunset Boulevard for some reason, I'm sure that would have been a very different environment. But everyone was sort of removed from the bigness of the show, really. Like everyone I would talk to on the show about like, this thing is such a, it's a monster. And how does it feel to be on this thing? And they're like, they all were kind of like, we don't really feel it because over here, no one cares. We would go to dinner, all of us, and no one bothered you. It was a very subdued sort of experience on that side of things. And I guess I was just so surprised. And how lovely everyone was, and how it just felt like we were all making this thing that was fun. And it just wasn't, I expected like a lot of ego and these people who had become inflated because of the success of this show. And there was none of that, both from in front of and behind the camera. Like, it was just lovely. And I felt so comfortable there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talk some of those main actors who were big stars. I mean, Josh Holloway, Naveen Andrews. Like you got to be pretty rough and demanding with those guys in character. I mean, you were torturing Sayid and holding Josh at Sawyer at gunpoint and getting into gunfights with them. I mean, you couldn't afford to, I guess, be shy with any of those folks. So it's good that they made you feel at ease because you were a real commanding presence in those scenes. Yeah,
it's funny. I've had little chats with Eddie Kitsis and Adam Horowitz, who were writing on the show. I did. You did Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time, yeah. And I think it was in an audition for them once. They were like, "You realize we were the two who were really trying to keep you going on there because we just loved how crazy he was." And I told them, they would always call us in the hotel and they'd say, your scripts are in the lobby, and we'd go down and get our script from someone and they were all sealed up. And I was always like, what in God's name are they going to have me do next week? Because he had just gone from stop touching my things to, holding people at gunpoint and my buddy Phil is smacking women around. I mean, they really became gangsters, these guys, like way over the top what I ever expected him to do. So, a time or two, it was like, God, how do I justify this? Like, they've really got him amped at this point. And you just sort of go with it and commit, and you hope the people at home go, well, of course he's doing that. He's a nut job, he's, so it was, that arc was such a surprise, every single time. I was like, oh my God, here we go again,
Yeah, well, it's funny. You say that it built up, and obviously it does. But again, having just gone back through and watched all your scenes, I think that the groundwork is laid pretty quickly. I mean, you're pretty much advocating for killing Sayid, just flat out execution from the moment you meet him. Right. Like you want you and Sawyer to go after him before going to the bosses.
right?
Then you get back to the bosses, and you threaten to go over Horace's head and call the bosses in Ann Arbor and get the decision taken away from him. And then the first chance you get, like you said, you become that kind of gang with Phil and you have goons following you around. I mean, it escalates, but the groundwork is laid right away, I think.
That's well stated. I mean, he started on kind of a level 8, and then they found a way to get to 11, I guess, but that's so much fun to play. People like that are just, I mean, that's just like, to be on that show in any capacity, and then to be on the show when you get to do ridiculous shit like that was just so much fun. It's truly, to this day, one of the top 2 highlights of my career is being on that show.
Well, now I've got to ask, what's the other one?
The other one is this show I just did a couple years ago called Escape at Dannemora for Showtime with Patricia Arquette and Benicio del Toro and Paul Dano and Ben Stiller directed it, and so that's
a pretty good group.
That was an awesome sort of company to be in, and an amazing part to play, and so I mean, I've got a lot of things I'm proud of, but Lost was just such a seminal moment, and it's funny. I remember Carlton saying to me that the day we talked during the finale, he's like, "Well, I think you'll find when you go back home, your life is going to be very different." And I was like, no. I guest star in a lot of these things, and I nobody ever knows who the hell. And sure enough, we went home, and we were in Burbank, and 3 people, during lunch walked over. I mean, I looked just like the guy, when I wasn't on the show, because it was my glasses that I wore and my hair, and so I was pretty easy to spot. But it truly did. It was like, there's a certain amount of credibility was gained, from casting people and producers and whatever. And then there was just a weird thing. I'd never been approached on the street for being on a show. I never, and that's, like I said, that's stuck. Like, there's, to this day, people will come up and want to talk about Lost. And so
every single actor I've interviewed from Lost, from the the biggest stars to the individual episode guest actors, tell me the exact same thing. Yeah. They all still hear from fans. What do people ask you?
Oh, why he was such an asshole. I mean, that's almost literally the same universal question.
Couple scenes I want to ask you about specifically. That scene in the finale, that whole sequence where everything is crazy and flying everywhere, and you're just shouting at everyone the whole time, and then it's all collapsing inward. What was that like to film? Because it's wild to watch on screen, and it looks like it must have been crazy to be there. Yeah,
I mean, the finale, you could tell that they brought some money to the game. I think we had 5 cameras going at the same time. Most shows you work on, maybe you've got 2, sometimes you got 3, but 5 cameras at once. And it was just a giant erector set that was all designed to slowly fall apart. I mean, you do piece by piece like you do anything. It's a puzzle that you're sort of shooting each puzzle piece, but it was a massive set in that way. They had dug this giant hole and built the scaffolding and the pit, and the little tunnel was on a stage, I believe. The well she was that they were in, but all the mud flying around and that was just all like, as I remember it, a lot of it felt like very much it was happening all at the same time. It didn't feel like little tiny pieces. It felt like this big circus they were shooting. It was crazy, and I was just scared as hell because I was ringleading, the whole thing for the most part, and that was definitely memorable. That was a memorable day, and I did have a double, and I can't remember exactly what he did for me. Lovely guy, I can't remember his name either, but there was some stuff that he did for me when it was too risky.
I think there's a moment when your car kind of flips over as you're trying to drive out.
I remember the Jeep.
The car.
He was in a Jeep, yeah.
Yeah.
And he did that. I'm glad he did that for me. That was kind of him. Probably should have bought him a beer or something after that.
Get him one of those Dharma beers from the old old
Yeah,
Dharma beers.
I have
Yeah.
one. That was my
Yeah?
parting gift.
Oh yeah, just for our
One of the
people who are
prop guys.
listening, Eric is pointing to the shelf behind him above his couch where there's a Dharma beer can. That's funny.
And there are my glasses too, from the show right up there.
Very
The
nice.
listening audience can't see them, but I had my glasses, and yeah, we were rapping, and one of the prop guys came up and said, why don't you take this with you? And
Didn't you say they were your glasses?
yeah, I got them at this little vintage store in L.A. and I loved them. And when I got the job, I was like, can I just do it? And they're like, we love the whole look. Like we're not changing anything. And the beard, it's just an odd dude. He is someone, that looked like he could have been living in a basement building small bombs for years, and just completely unknown that he was down there. And his mom was upstairs or something. I don't know. Quirky.
One of the other scenes that you were in that I just thought stood out was the scene where it was two scenes. First, you get into a gunfight with Jack and Kate, and this giant barrel of fuel blows up, and you kind of go all red.
Yeah.
Did they actually blow a thing up right in front of you, or how did that? What was that like?
Something did blow up. I don't recall that I was close to it, but yeah, I think they did kind of a burned sort of thing, at least from the immediate blast. I laugh because that's somewhere in the realm of "ring the alarm," which was this line I had where I stood up after something blew up and I was like, "Ring the alarm!" And it became a GIF or a GIF or whatever you call it, and it was one of those lines. It was like, oh man, it's just 1,000% Radzinsky and slightly embarrassing for some reason because it was so pathetic at the same time. Like, turn on an alarm, gosh damn.
Well, you had just been shot in your defense.
Exactly. But boy, lots of venom in that one, and a line a lot of people made fun of it, and rightly so. It was just somehow funny, watching him do it. But
well, what's funny to me is I actually thought your best line reading of this is my amateur opinion. I know nothing about acting, but to me, your funniest line reading was in your next scene. When you show up at Sawyer's house to tell him what's going on, and your hand is bandaged, it's all bandaged up and bleeding, and he's looking at you like, what's going on? And you say, and I'm not going to do it, but you say, I just got shot by a physicist. And you have this fun emphasis on physicist, like that's really what offends you about it, that a physicist shot you of all people. It's so funny.
Yeah, that's probably the only piece of comedy I have, intentional comedy, in the show. But I do remember even rehearsing that it was difficult for us not to laugh. It was just like his anger at being shot and then labeling the physicist as the culprit. It was great. It was just, again, like just another moment of the power of the writing on that show. They could sort of weave in and out of humor and drama and sadness, and it's just brilliant. Just brilliant.
It totally is. And one very last thing, you referenced this. You referenced that of all the things Radzinsky did, that at least he wouldn't hit a woman like Phil did, his compatriot.
Right.
And we also have on the podcast this season Patrick Fischler, who played Phil. I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and we talked about that moment and how gross he felt doing that. And I just thought it was funny watching that scene because there is a cut to you, and you look like aghast. And I watched like, wow, even so, okay, even there's something that Radzinsky is aghast at. That's the only time you look, bothered by anything or anyone.
Yeah, Patrick's a friend of mine.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and in fact, I just did this Netflix show, and before the world ended, and Patrick guest starred on it, so we got to have dinner and catch up about Lost and life in general. He's a great guy, and crushed it on that show. Yeah, I feel like, those guys are like, there are lines that you cross, and I will push people to the ends of the earth, and we will test these theories, and we will do this crazy scientific shit. But you don't hit a girl, man. You don't hit a woman. There's a sense of decorum about this at the same time.
I was still surprised to see that, given everything I knew about you. But I guess you had a code, and it was a bare minimum code. You had something.
Well, and to the editor's credit, they didn't have to show that. That was kind of weirdly half Eric, half watching Patrick really haul off on her. There's something startling about it, no matter who you are, and I always thought it was interesting that they gave me that that there was a little bit of humanity that eked out of him in that reaction, and they didn't have to show it, So, yeah, Phil was a piece of work. I mean, if Radzinsky was bad, Phil was probably capable of a lot worse.
That's funny. Well, I was going to say, I mean, obviously you needed to stay alive at the end because you go on to be, the guy in the hatch. But I was thinking, it's not Radzinsky who gets impaled through the heart at the end to make people laugh. It's Phil.
Right.
It's Phil who plays that role.
Yeah, there was some job security in that show because the future had to happen. So,
did it affect the way you played the character at all? Sort of knowing what was ultimately going to happen to him, that he was going to go and live down in that hatch and push that button every 108 minutes and ultimately, I mean, kill himself as a result of it. It seems.
Yeah, I always was like, oh, please give me just some part of an episode where we figure out, what that was. Now that we know who was down there, like what was that? What was it like with him down there? And you can only fathom if he was alone, this man who seems to live through bossing other people around, and living amongst his minions, to just be alone with his thoughts and his madness. And this swan, it's one of the things I always wanted to see selfishly, just an episode, even if I didn't play it. What the hell happened down there, So that didn't affect, though, anything I was doing in the show. I just figured that at the end of it all, maybe it broke him. Maybe he was a completely different being, in that swan, and he was humbled, and but the part we saw of him had to be full throttle until the very end,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's always talk of lost revivals of different kinds and ways to go back. So
of course,
maybe the Radzinsky story someday.
Oh my God! Please, we just call it Stew or something. Stew! Exclamation point. I mean, with all the remakes of everything that go on, it's like I'm shocked, and at the same time not that nothing's been done with that, because it's such hallowed ground. You can't screw that up, and it would be tough not to screw it up.
Part of the reason, by the way, before we lose the train of thought, that I asked the question about knowing what comes later with Radzinsky is because as I was rewatching your scenes, I was kind of wondering, why does he make that decision ultimately to go down there and be the guy who pushes that button? And the two things that were in my head were, one, maybe he. Is there any way it's possible that he, feels, some kind of guilt or responsibility for having screwed this thing up so badly that he has to go and, repent down there? Or does he just not trust anyone else to do this job of saving the world besides himself? And I don't know if either one of those is it, but I feel like the second one might be more likely.
Yeah, I feel like it's his baby, and even the system built to basically protect the failure that he caused.
Right.
by drilling into this thing. This was really a bottle cork, right? I mean, that's kind of what it is. And maybe in the back of his mind, there's some penance to have to press this button every 108 minutes. But I truly think people like that are so precious about their work that there's no one else. One, I think he would trust to do it because someone's going to fall asleep and it's going to fail. And two, given that it's his baby, he does get to protect the world every 108 minutes and keep it from total annihilation. So in that way, he's his own quiet hero down there.
That's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah,
I like that.
There's an upside for him.
Yeah. Do you remember the line that Kelvin was your partner down there, and that's who we learn about you from? That. I don't know if you remember, but the last thing he said, the thing he says about you to Desmond when we first learn about you is, "See that brown stain there? That's Radzinsky. He put a shotgun in his mouth when I was asleep. The bitch of it was, I only had 108 minutes to bury the poor bastard."
Yeah.
Such a good line.
I mean, it's great writing, it's great writing. And nothing is really said. The brown stain, the poor son of a bitch, there's very little to go on, which is why the mystery of what went on down there is so intriguing. because to our earlier point, like there was some nobility in being down there and pressing the button. There was some selfishness about doing it, but obviously at some point it was like, there's an eternity to this that is unsustainable, you know? And so, yeah.
Did you keep watching the show? You watched the 6th season, I assume, till the end?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We always ask this just because among fans it's, you know, controversial. What did you think of the finale?
Yeah, I saw it at the Orpheum in LA. They had this giant screening with I think Michael was there, Emerson, and there was a few of us.
Right.
They had to a Q&A before the thing or before the thing. And then we all watched it together. So I watched it with like 2,000 people or something. And awesome. And the energy and the, you know, was really unforgettable. I'll never forget that. I don't know. I'm sort of the camp. I'm a bit mixed because I read that final scene. It felt like a form of a purgatory to me, which I had always sort of read really wasn't going to be what it was. And that, you know, there was some uncertainty about how it was going to end up. And yet it felt like there was this sense of a purgatory. And knowing those guys not well, but as little as I did on the show, and the way I did on the show, I don't see that last season as anything other than an equally, well, frankly, almost an unaccomplishable to please everybody with that final season, especially that final episode, is a failure. There's no way, you know, you can please everybody. So I'm sure they worked just as hard, if not more, on that entire season. But in terms of the finale, I'm in the camp that I was a little soft on that one aspect of it.
Because you were underwhelmed by the purgatory answer. You were expecting something different.
That's kind of the feeling I got. And to be honest, I didn't go online and immediately read all the reactions.
Good for you.
I didn't. And I was like, this is just sort of, I'm just going to let the experience wash over me, and then I'm going to go on with my life. Because, you know, I still felt very attached to the show. You know, to this day, I feel like I got to be in the club, you know. And so I didn't want to read people trashing it or read people making it, you know, more than it was. I just know for me, if I'm being honest, and I should, that was the one part I was like, oh, is that really kind of what it wasn't going to be? And even though it might have been, did that make it bad? And I don't think it made it bad. It just became sort of a semantics game about, did they do something they said they weren't going to do? But even if that's what happened, was that wrong or was that bad? And I can't say that was the case at all. You know, it was still really enjoyable. I was just like, oh, that's the way it ended, you know? So
I know this is a little challenging with the pandemic, but last question, what are you working on now, or where have you been lately that folks can see you?
The show I just mentioned,
Before the End of the World?
Yeah, Before the End of the World is called Brand New Cherry Flavor. Okay. It's a very weird title, but it's a novel that is a show for Netflix, and it's me and Catherine Keener and Rosa Salazar, and it's a very, very weird story. It's the weirdest thing I've ever been in, but I'm incredibly fascinated to see what people are going to think about it. And I don't think that'll be out for a while, but we did this little LA stint of it during the COVID thing for a couple weeks just to finish up what we hadn't gotten done because we were almost finished. So that'll be out at some point. And then I'm on Perry Mason on HBO. And we're going into production on season 2 of that in May, I think. So, okay. So between now and May, I don't know what I'm doing. Being a dad and fixing toilets, but yeah, there's some good stuff coming. So,
yeah, you were telling me before we started recording, you've got two young kids. Are you excited to show them Lost when they're old enough for it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think that's that's one of the ones that would stick around for me for sure to show them. You know, they want to see stuff I'm doing. Well, to be honest, half the time they really don't care. They want to see wigs and makeup and, you know, my trailer. And, you know, they're interested in all the, you know, the odd stuff about it. But there's stuff I think about that I want them to see when they grow up. And that's probably one of them for sure. But yeah, they're 2.5 and 6 now. So they're not watching much more than My Little Pony and Aladdin and their obsessions, you know.
As it should be.
Oh, yeah. It's fun.
Well, Eric Lange, you can see him at some point in the not-too-distant future on brand new Cherry Flavor on Netflix, Perry Mason on HBO. Eric, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us on The Hatch. This has been great.
Oh, thanks. This is so great to go down memory lane on this show.
Oh, man. I love how much thought Eric has put into this character. I particularly love the idea that Radzinsky is sort of this deeply committed scientist who wanted to be doing this incredible work and instead sort of ends up in the Dharma Initiative and is trying to, you know, continue pursuing what he thinks is very noble. But he sort of sees himself as surrounded by idiots. I think that's A, kind of funny, and B, like a really, really good reading of who Radzinsky is and help me make sense of him.
I couldn't agree more. The first note that I took listening back to this was Stuart Radzinsky. Misunderstood genius?
I don't think so.
No, I don't either. I mean, clearly he was onto something with the electromagnetism because that stuff was real.
Well, and he was committed enough to your point in this conversation that he remained there for like 2 decades, you know, pushing the button.
Gosh, yeah, we don't know exactly how long he was down there, but it was a long time.
It must have been.
It was definitely a long time.
Years and years and years and years.
Yeah, and he made the blast door map during all of that too.
Yeah.
It's another thing to think about. Like, that was some impressive work. Anyway,
yeah.
No, I agreed. He had some great insights into the character, and as he also references, we've got Patrick Fischler coming up on the podcast. Patrick Fischler, who plays Phil, we'll have him coming up in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, before we get to Patrick, next week we're going to watch Whatever Happened, Happened, and our guest for that episode will be Bobby Roth, who directed it. Give us a call and leave us your hot take. You can do so at 9546-DHARMA. If you are outside the United States, just add the number 1 in front of that number.
Please follow us on social media, Twitter at The Hatch Podcast, Facebook.com/The Hatch Podcast. And you know we love ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, so please take a minute and do that if you can.
Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen, and our cover art is by Danny Roth.
And we will be back next week.
Namaste.